Our story for all ages today is an important one. This video that we are about to watch is just a short excerpt of a longer video from Teaching Tolerance, which is part of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And they put together a documentary called Mighty Times, The Children's March. It tells the story of the children who participated in the civil rights movement. How appropriate for an intergen service in February, right?
D-Day was the day, I tell you. This was the day where every student in Birmingham knew that it was going to happen. But you gotta
That's a hard act to follow. But isn't it great just seeing one of those stories that we probably all vaguely remember, but seeing it reenacted and how it fills us with some hope and joy. I don't know about you, but when I hear the phrase, once upon a time, my mind almost automatically goes into a different state of being. It's almost as if once upon a time is a hypnotic cue, kind of a spell or a mantra of sorts that puts me in a trance, which is why I might even say I'm entranced, or that I find someone entrancing. Once upon a time. Here's a story that the playwright Ken Kelman once told on the National Public Radio program, All Things Considered. All Things Considered, by the way, is one of those shows which I think some of you know the Reverend Drew Kennedy, because he preaches here occasionally. He referred to All Things Considered as the closest thing UUs have to a daily mass. Anyway, here's the story that Ken Kelman told on that show. It was a small town. Homer Smith was my neighbor. I knew him most of my life and all of his. He was a quiet man, hardly spoke except to tell stories. Never married or did anything at all remarkable except the stories. It started when we were kids. The first time Homer skipped class, he didn't forge a note from his mother or provide any of the usual excuses. Instead, he told our teacher the story about his uncle who memorized the Merriam-Webster dictionary and then couldn't stop talking. He was excused then and every time after because he always had a story. We were in the Army together. Homer never had KP or any unpleasant details. He would tell the sergeant a story, like the one about his great-grandfather in the cavalry who always carried a broken sword, and the sergeant would always give the dirty work to someone else so he could hear how the story worked out. One day, a mail clerk at the post office where Homer worked was fired, and he snapped. He came back with a rifle and said no one could leave. And Homer told him a story. It was a long story, and as Homer went on, all the hostages crept away. Then the police came in, and the deranged clerk didn't even notice. But when he saw himself surrounded, he said he would go peacefully if they let Homer finish his story. Ken Kelman then goes on to say, people got Homer's stories with their mail, stories better than any letter, stories worth waiting for, even if the mail was always late. And then Homer retired. It was his heart. So people came to his home for the stories. One day when I arrived there, Homer was not in his usual chair on the porch. He was propped up on a couch inside. A bunch of friends stood around. Homer looked pale and his breathing was labored. The doctor had been called, and Homer was gazing intently at something we couldn't see. No, he said, not yet. Listen, there once was a great king, but the greater he got, the busier he got, and the older he got, and the less time he had. So he summons the supreme clockmaker in this vast kingdom and said, I need more time. And the clockmaker replied, I know only one method, sire, by which that may be achieved. There is a great clock called the Dragon Clock, which you must enter, and at its heart—" Homer stopped. He tried to talk. His mouth gaped and his eyes widened. He couldn't believe that death would cut short his story. Neither could any of us in that incredible silence.